Dun dun dun. Dun, 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 dun. Game genres. The spice of life for your average gamer. I'm sure most of the people watching this video are gamers. If not, how did you find this channel? And I like to imagine that most gamers enjoy a wide variety of games. I hope. Me, myself, and I enjoy quite a few different types of games and genres. All sorts of FPS games, MOBAs, open world sandboxes, mech sims, fighting games, RPGs, open world games, you name it. And I very much enjoy Valve games, as evidenced by my entire channel's upload history. But, speaking of Valve games, hold on, wait a minute, something ain't right.
Yeah, good hold from Metin. Oh my god, the soldier! Oh no!
Valve is known for redefining the genre of games that they make, but those game genres, well, they're many things, but diverse isn't necessarily one of them. You can basically boil them down to different flavors of FPS shooter games. I'm talking in broad strokes here. I completely understand that of Valve's games, they are very unique from one another, but what I mean by that is essentially Half-Life, immersive single-player shooter game, Team Fortress 2, team class-based shooter game, Left 4 Dead, zombie co-op shooter game, Portal, puzzle shooter game, etc., etc. Yes, I know Deadlock and Alien Swarm are technically in different perspectives, but still shooter games. And I guess Dota is there too. In other words, they make a ton of games. Many of them, not all, many of them are masterpieces. But at the same time, they also have a lot of similarities. And to the untrained eye, that means casuals like your grandma, these games might appear to be a little samey. So the point of this video is to discuss the possibility of Valve covering other types of genres, how I can see them making these types of games, and of course to rate the likelihood of these genres being made by Valve in the first place. Just imagine Valve in the future making an open world game, an RPG, a fighting game, a rock band music rhythm game. The possibilities are truly endless. So join me, Internet Wanderer, as we take a plunge in this cope-filled wish list of a video, and maybe I can show you the potential of some of these game ideas that this legendary company could maybe make one day. And maybe, just maybe, they might actually make one of these games in the future. We can only hope. I mean, obviously, we're all waiting for the cooking game In the Kitchen with G-Man.
Gordon, today we'll be making some soup. Prepare your anus for unforeseen consequences.
Hello and welcome, Internet Wanderer. My name is Argonax. I make video reviews, essays, commentaries, and shorts. I hope you enjoy my content enough to do all the YouTube things, such as liking and subscribing. And special thanks to all the channel members, to who I am extremely grateful for their support. Their contributions mean the world to me, and it helps keep the channel going. So, if you'll allow me, let's get back to the topic at hand. So, game genres. Put it simply, it's the category or flavor of gameplay characteristics that a said game has. And most games usually have more than just one genre. They tend to have several subgenres, kind of like music. Yeah, there's rock, but then there's rap rock, classic rock, funk rock, alternative rock, metal, new metal, Christian rock, etc. Now, I don't know what exactly Valve is cooking in their headquarters. Nobody does. That's the whole point of this community-wide schizophrenia that we all have. But I can make some educated guesses as to the games and genres that they seem to like to make. They tend to tackle games where there is room to innovate or to push these game genres forward. For example, single-player first-person shooter games existed well before Valve. Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, etc. But it was Valve that was able to elevate the genre to new heights when they released Half-Life 1 in 1998. And they did such a good job that you can literally draw a line between first-person shooters before and after Half-Life. Because, in my opinion, FPS games before Half-Life 1 could be considered boomer shooters. That's not really stated anywhere in writing, but that's just what I think. But it doesn't stop there. Valve was able to branch out the FPS genre even more after Half-Life. They basically invented tactical shooters and class shooters with Counter-Strike and Team Fortress. You also have the case of Portal and Left 4 Dead. And while these two games did not invent the respective subgenres, that being of puzzle FPS for Portal and co-op shooters for Left 4 Dead, they essentially act as the gold standard for those subgenres. However, in the grand scheme of games and genres that Valve has made, the types of games that they have made is still a relatively small puddle in the ocean of different types of games that exists out there. I'm not expecting Valve to make a ton of new genres. After all, game companies usually like to specialize in certain types of games. For example, Bethesda likes to make open world RPGs. And bugs.
I work for Bellathor.
FromSoft games specialize in making my blood pressure go up. Ubisoft makes perfectly acceptable and decent games that will forever stand the test of time.
Damn, son, where'd you find that?
And Valve, mostly, likes to make first-person shooter games. And not just that, they kind of have this addiction to the need to innovate, as they constantly try to push the envelope of any game that they make. So, while some of the game genres that I will be discussing today might not be realistic for Valve to make, or maybe these genres might not have the wiggle room to innovate, that won't stop me from talking about these hypothetical games. I'm still gonna rate everything in this video on a likelihood scale of how likely Valve is actually going to make this said game or genre, but I still want to talk about it. So let's start this off with a rather realistic probability. A horror game. And by that I mean a true, dedicated horror game. Valve's games have always had horror elements within them. Half-Life with its zombies, specifically the Ravenholm and Jeff levels. Shameless plug, go watch it.
Come on, close it.
Portal with its rogue AI is already pretty scary in of itself.
I had a pretty good life. And then you showed up. You dangerous, mute lunatic.
Left 4 Dead is literally a zombie apocalypse, and The Witch being a highlight of terror and suspension that the game can make. Seriously, when I was a kid playing Left 4 Dead for the first time and I saw a witch and this music kicked in, this was terrifying. It still is terrifying. But none of these games are true horror games. So just imagine what they could do if they decided to really make a dedicated horror game. Besides, most horror games nowadays usually incorporate elements that Valve already likes to do within its single-player game. Horror games are usually known for immersion and typically involve obstacles like puzzles and physics. They rely on seamless storytelling for the most part. I mean, if you want an example of a game that already has all of these elements, take a look at Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Immersion, physics, and puzzles. It's all there, and this game was made in 2011. This honestly seems like a match made in heaven. Valve might add an option for slow tactical combat, or there might be even no combat at all. Or, maybe even better yet, the game could be in VR. I know I mentioned it before, but legitimately, the Jeff level in Half-Life Alyx is one of the most terrifying experiences you can have in gaming out there. I know that this is a shameless self-plug, but honestly, go watch the video that I made covering this level. It showcases the reactions of various different players experiencing this horrifying chapter of the game, and it's amazing. I won't spoil much of it, but just look at their reactions.
I f***ing hate this. I despise this. Why would they make something like this?
I don't do well with shit like this at all, guys. I really don't. I'm gonna be quiet for pretty much the entirety of this level.
Oh, he actually still has a face, but it's split in half.
This is amazing. This is amazing, but holy f***, I'm actually sweating. I don't like this, dude.
It's over there, look!
Can you make any more noise right now? Oh, fucking hell, yes you can. The answer is yes. What does that do? Oh, no, come on, no. No. Okay, I don't like this now. I'm not happy. I'm not happy now.
So now imagine if Valve made an entire game like that. I don't really know if there's much innovation that could be done in the horror game space. I mean, if the whole point of horror games is to scare the player, then Valve already does that effortlessly. Combine that with their ability to masterfully balance game mechanics, and boom, you probably have one of the best horror games in your hands right there. The only true horror experiences that Valve has right now is competitive in Counter-Strike or rank in Dota. That shit's scary. On to another genre, and this one is definitely more fitting for the wish list aspect of this video.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should
play fighting games and subscribe to the Argonax channel.
Now!
A fighting game. Now, I completely understand. There's not much innovation that can be done in the fighting game space. Not really. And the likelihood of Valve making a fighting game, yeah, it's next to nothing, in my opinion. But let's put it this way. There's different types of fighting games out there. 2D fighters, 3D fighters, Tekken, I love Tekken, I've been playing it so much. Go watch the videos that I've been making about it, please.
Shut the fuck up, no one cares. Know your fucking place, trash.
You also got things like platform fighters and arena fighters. Now, I myself have never really played Smash Brothers, but I do know that a lot of people have been wanting them to add TF2 characters to the game. And I'm not sure why they haven't done that. If I had to assume, it's probably because Nintendo and Valve just don't communicate, because asking Valve to communicate is like asking me to stop making your mom jokes. It's never going to happen. But I think there's also things like Nintendo cannot explicitly show a gun in Smash Brothers. I don't know. But regardless, people have been asking for a Valve representative in Smash Brothers, or any fighting game, honestly, for a while. Hey gamers, quick break section here so I can ask the engagement question of the video. So, if you had the choice of losing your right index finger or your left index finger whenever you play games, which finger would you sacrifice? I'm not talking about which finger you'd sacrifice in general. You will only lose one of these fingers whenever you are about to play a video game. Let's say, for the sake of the example, your finger becomes, I don't know, a wet noodle whenever you pick up a controller or keyboard or mouse. Again, if you had to lose your left or right index finger only when you're gaming, which one would you give up and why? Engagement. Personally, I'd give up my left finger just because your mom prefers my right, you know what I'm saying? I know in the grand scheme of things, the fighting game community is rather niche, understandably so, but nevertheless, just imagine if Valve did make a fighting game. I think that they could probably do a platform fighter, a la PlayStation All-Stars, but call it, I don't know, Valve All-Stars or Steam All-Stars or something like that. They could pick characters from their vast ocean of IPs and franchises, and it can just be like a fun game. It doesn't need to be balanced, it doesn't need to be competitively viable. It could just be a fun game that Valve would make. You could imagine fighting on a platform with Gordon fighting Heavy from TF2, and then your teammates are playing, I don't know, GLaDOS or the tank from Left 4 Dead. It's just cool to think about. And I know that this is very unlikely to happen. I can at least say that Valve has dabbled in this before, because they made a minigame fighting game mode in Dota 2. I'll talk about this more later, but you can see it exists. It's relatively simplistic and it's not really all that deep, but it happened. Now, talking about a genre that's definitely more likely. We have an open world RPG. I think this specific genre has the absolute highest potential out of any other subgenre out there, because, well, RPGs and open world games can literally go anywhere. The criteria is, the potential in this genre is nigh unlimited. And it kinda shows. Many games that are Game of the Year have been open world RPGs. For the most part. And despite being such a popular and all-encompassing game genre, Valve has never actually attempted it. So, just like in the horror game pitch that I made to you earlier, imagine an open-world game running on the Source 2 engine, with all of the incredible physics and reactive properties that engine can do. There have been a lot of leaks about the potential gameplay mechanics that Half-Life 3 will make. And one of the things that I've seen a lot of reports about is the fact that there might be some sort of dynamic voxel-based terrain. Imagine if the world was as dynamic and malleable like Minecraft. but, you know, realistic, with all of the physics that Valve games usually have. A hyper-reactive world. Another rumor that people have been swirling around about Half-Life 3 and the Source 2 engine is that Valve is trying to make a push towards smart, procedurally generated AI NPCs. That's right, NPCs that can come up with new and novel conversations on the fly. That's certainly an improvement over Oblivion, I'll tell you what.
Hello. How are you today? I've been better. How about you? I've been better. What's the news from the other parts of Tamriel? I've been better. How about you? I've been better. I've been better.
I've always wondered why Valve has never really made an open world game. And when I say open world, I mean in the literal sense. There has never been a big Valve map. The closest thing that comes to mind is Danger Zone from Counter-Strike Global Offensive, but that was a battle royale, not an open world. Would you really call this an open world when the draw distance is this close? Man, I really miss Danger Zone. We're never getting it back, are we? God damn it, Gabe. And just like any great RPG or open world games, you need a lot of writing. And well, I don't need to tell you how good Valve's writing is. Anywhere between Alex Vance, the Meet the Team shorts, all the jokes in Portal, Valve knows how to make lovable and memorable characters. But all of that is dialogue. It's writing in the short tense, if that kind of makes sense. But an RPG would be a game that would allow Valve to show off their abilities to not just write, but write novels worth of incredible writing. Because when you really look at Valve's games and you try to find places that Valve has lots of text, the written word, there's actually not a lot of Valve games that has a lot of perusable text. The only one that comes to mind is the character lores in Dota 2. There is a lot of lore, and some of them are legitimately really well written.
Problem, you mad bro. Enjoy your ban. Why doesn't anybody like me?
But that's honestly about it. Valve has never really been given the chance to stretch their writing wings, if that makes sense. So imagine a Valve RPG with oceans of text. And when I say text, I mean like in-game books, kind of like Skyrim, but you know, actually interesting to read. That's a joke. Some books in Skyrim are actually a good read. You know the one I'm talking about. There is one major obstacle, however. Open world RPGs require a lot of manpower in order to make. And this is something that Valve kinda lacks, because despite all of the prestige that Valve has, they only have about 300 employees. And granted, I know that there's other companies out there who was able to make incredible RPGs with less. Take Kingdom Come 2 Deliverance, for example. I love that game. I haven't finished it yet, but amazing game.
Fuck you, Catchpole! When a guard orders you to do something, you do it. First you'll pay, then I'll search you.
I really am very sorry, Master Guardsman. You see, I don't hear very well. Back when I was fighting against those Hungarian raiders, I had a hand cannon go off next to my head. Ever since then, I've been half deaf.
A battle wound, eh? I know how that is. At Nicopolis, my father took a mace to the head so hard, his helmet broke in half. After that, he couldn't hear too well either.
What's that?
I said I know all about bad hearing.
What? Herring? Is it for supper?
Bad hearing. I said I understand.
No, not my hand. It's my ears that are the problem.
Christ almighty. Get out of here. Let's just forget about this.
I don't need to piss. I just went.
Clear off, or I'll kick your ass out of here.
That's right. I damaged my ear. I already told you that.
Knowing Valve, if they wanted to make an open world RPG, they wouldn't settle for anything less than extreme groundbreaking stuff. And I'm not sure that those 300 employees is enough for Valve to really fulfill that groundbreaking RPG vision that they would have if they decided to make this open world RPG. Is it possible? Most definitely. And I think Valve has definitely considered making one in the past. I mean, if nothing else, Dota isn't necessarily known for its lore as per se, but there is just enough lore there that there's a lot of people out there who really enjoy the deeper aspects of Dota's lore. Hell, they were able to make a TV show out of it. So a brand new fantasy world is a challenge for Valve, but it's a challenge I would love to see them tackle. Because if they decide to do that, the end product would be astounding. Alright, this next thing is not necessarily a game genre as per se, it's more so just a possibility that I would like to see Valve cover, but I would love to see Valve make a TV show. And by that I mean a TV show with Valve oversight. I know that there was that Dota show, I watched it, 3 seasons. However, from everything that I've heard, Valve had very little oversight or say in the production of this show. And it's kinda apparent. The writing is not bad, far from it, but it's not as memorable as you would hope. There were other problems with the show. I don't necessarily think it's related to Valve and it was more so Netflix meddling with the production. But nevertheless, it's unfortunate because it impacts the overall quality of that TV show. So imagine if Valve decided to make their own TV show by themselves. That would have been amazing. And we almost had that in the past. The TF2 cinematic expiration date was the pilot episode of a TF2 TV show that would have aired on Adult Swim. So this one is unlikely, but still nice to think about. This next genre, Valve has already kind of dabbled with in the past, and by that I mean,
let's go play a roguelite game. Aw, dang it. Aw, dang it. Aw, dang it. Aw, dang.
Co-op roguelites. This is the type of genre that I would say has the highest probability of the fun factor. In terms of just pure distilled fun, straight to the point fun, roguelites are where it's at. If I can give you guys some recommendations, I would say a good place to start would be games like Risk of Rain 2, Dead Cells, and my personal favorite, Synthetic. And the fun of it just comes from the randomized nature of it, the challenge of the gameplay. Each time that you play the game, each run, it's a gauntlet where the factors constantly change. And then when you realize that Valve games, at least a good portion of them, already kinda have this, the elements that make roguelites roguelites. For example, Left 4 Dead, the level design and item placements change all the time. Anytime you try to run a campaign of Left 4 Dead, you will always notice that certain doorways might be locked or unlocked. The placement of different items, destructible areas. Sure, it's not necessarily a selling point of the game, but it's there. Combine that with the fact that Left 4 Dead has the AI director, which dynamically makes things easier or more difficult depending on the flow of the game. It essentially allows for more replayability than the game normally would have. And that's honestly a good way to put it. Roguelites are about replayability. And the nice thing about most Valve games is that their replayability is already insanely high, even for their single-player games. But we're not here talking about single-player roguelites, even though single-player roguelites are amazing. Co-op roguelites increase that replayability and fun factor exponentially, in my opinion. And a lot of Valve players in the Valve community kind of realizes this. For example, there are well-known Counter-Strike roguelite mods out there. There's entire videos going over the development of these mods. I think some of them got discontinued when the game switched from CSGO to Counter-Strike 2. I'm not sure if they've resumed development on these things, but regardless, the hard work speaks for itself. Valve games just inherently have this good skeleton, this good backbone to allow for roguelike style elements. And that's not even mentioning Dota 2. Dota 2 had a limited time game mode called Aghanim's Labyrinth. And this limited time game mode was so fun. It was incredibly well made. You want to know how well made it is? I have friends who absolutely hate Dota 2. They're League of Legends players. But when they found out about Aghanim's Labyrinth, they were the ones calling me at the odd hours late at night just to play this game mode. That's how well made it was. You can still play it in the Dota 2 client if you download the custom game mode, but it's not the same. If it was an official game mode or an official standalone game, the allure would be a lot higher. So whether or not Valve decides to make a spin-off or just a brand new IP, the demand for roguelites is already there. And Valve doesn't even need to take a risk in doing this because they have established that the demand for roguelites is already high enough as is. And they have shown that they can be successful, even as something as small as a limited time game mode. So just imagine if they decided to make a full-on game. And speaking of that limited time game mode, Dota 2 seems to be a breeding ground for mini games and limited time game modes for Valve. You have the aforementioned Aghanim's Labyrinth, the co-op roguelite, but prior to that you had Siltbreaker, which was a co-op campaign story mode. Sure, it was a little more bare bones compared to Aghanim's Labyrinth, but it was still good for what it was. And then you have other PvE game modes such as Dire Tide and Wraith Knight, where you and your friends run through a gauntlet of AI enemies and you fight a big final boss towards the end. And that's not even getting into the minigames. Dota 2 has so many minigames. In this last event alone, the Crownfall update, there were so many minigames that they added to the game. Flappy Bird, Bomberman, Minesweeper, Candy Crush, a fighting game, a bullet hell. And yes, I completely recognize that these things are just that. They're game modes. This is just the Valve developers having a little bit of fun with the Dota 2 assets. I don't necessarily think that we can expect a Flappy Bird official Valve game anytime soon, but it just goes to show that Valve is more than willing to dabble in these other genres, even if just for a little bit. I don't know if you can still play these minigames if you wanted to. I'm fairly certain someone will add them to the Dota 2 arcade at some point. But yeah, I just wanted to bring this up because not a lot of people know about this, especially non-Dota 2 players, so it's just really cool to see. Now, for a more niche genre of game, but something that Valve definitely has a lot of interest in making,
What the hell is that? Hey! Stop playing,
VR games. Now, VR in of itself is a rather broad term because you can make VR technically out of anything. You can make a horror game VR, you could make a racing game VR, you can even make a dating sim VR. That's already pretty much what VR chat already kind of is, but whatever.
Okay, now she's getting somebody a blowjob.
I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that.
Valve is a true pioneer of VR gaming, and they think that it's going to be the future of this industry. It might not be this year, it might not be in the next year, it might not be in the next 10 years, but they truly believe that VR is the way forward. Hell, even to this day, Half-Life Alyx is still the best AAA VR game out there, and this is a 5-year-old game, and it still looks amazing. And I completely understand that VR is a barrier of entry in of itself. VR is not cheap. You need to get yourself a headset in order to play it. It's not as simple as just modding VR games to run on a mouse and keyboard. It won't work. It's kind of like the equivalent of playing, I don't know, Where's Waldo on a radio or something. It's not compatible. So while it's rather unfortunate that VR has the barrier that is a price point, in other words, a headset, as time goes on, more people will have access to these headsets, as it's a technology that's constantly getting cheaper and easier to access. And right now, most other companies don't really want to dip their toes into making VR games. It's a niche market and the return on investment is not very good. And Valve is the only company with both the means and the funds to make more VR games. And I think it's only a matter of time before they actually do that. Will it be a new IP, or will they return to the Half-Life games? Maybe make a VR Portal game or Left 4 Dead? We don't know. But all I can tell you is that Valve loves immersion. And I don't think you can get any more immersive than VR. I'm not trying to pitch you guys to buy a VR headset, obviously not. They're very expensive. But I will say that the MetaQuest 3 headset did come out, and a lot of people did buy the MetaQuest 2 headset. And you can buy these things for cheap, especially if they're secondhand. That's the headset I own, and it works incredibly well. You can play this thing in wireless mode, and it's incredible with a VR headset that doesn't require wires. It runs pretty damn well, especially as an entry-level VR headset. So, you know, food for thought. Alternatively, you can use that money and donate to the channel. Hey! And for the last part of this video, it's just gonna be my pick. My personal, extremely biased, unrealistic pick that I would love to see Valve make a game for. A mech sim. Well, more specifically, Mech Warrior. Okay, listen, I'm very biased towards this universe, okay? This IP in general. It's set in the BattleTech universe. BattleTech is like, imagine it's like D&D or Warhammer 40k, except not as popular. I've heard Mandalore Gaming describe the BattleTech and MechWarrior universe like, imagine if Caterpillar bought a Gundam factory. These mechs are not fast, they're basically walking tanks. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is, well, number one, I'm extremely biased. And number two, it also kind of allows for this hyper immersion that I think would fit Valve perfectly. And also, take a look at the gameplay that I'm showing here. Most of the game can be played through the cockpit of the mech. This is perfect VR material right here, and it kind of shows. There have been other VR mech games like Vox Machina? Vox Machina? This game, I played it. It's pretty damn good, but it's not MechWarrior. I know this isn't realistic, but hey, Gabe, you have a lot of money. Why don't you buy the rights to this universe and this IP, please? The current developers aren't doing shit with it. I know it'll take you guys like 50 years to actually finally get around to making a game, but still, get to it. Chop chop. This is unlikely to happen, but it's my fantasy. And with that, that's all the genres that I want to cover. I know that a lot of these aren't exactly groundbreaking and some of these are a little far-fetched, but hey, Valve is known for redefining and innovating upon genres that they've already made, so why not just fantasize about them doing something that they're not necessarily used to or accustomed to, out of their comfort zone, in other words. But what did you think, Internet Wanderer? Do you think any of these game concepts or game genre concepts that I brought up were interesting or, stupid? Let's be real, they were most likely stupid. What game genre would you like to see Valve cover in the future? Comment your thoughts in the comment section down below. And I think that's all gonna do it for me today, Internet Wanderer. Thanks for watching. Do the YouTube things.